If you've never had a liquid IV and you're thirsty, I mean, duh, like that's what it's made for. It's very delicious and hydrating. Hey y'all, welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about every job that I had in the month of August. If you're new here, I'm Dustin. I work in the commercial film industry here in Birmingham, Alabama. And in these videos, I like to take y'all through all the gigs I had in a previous month, just to kind of talk about the variety of jobs I do. I like anything that kind of demystifies being a film worker or a production worker. I hope these are helpful to you. I hope they're valuable in some way. If you have any questions about the jobs that I'm doing, please drop it down below. I'm not gonna talk specifically about how much I'm being paid for each job, but at the end of the video, I will give kind of a rough total of what I made for the whole month. So with all that said, if you enjoy this, if you learned something, if you get something out of it, please hit like down below, and thanks for hanging out in my living room with me. Let's jump in. What a YouTuber thing to say, let's jump in. Like Corbin Bleu in the Disney Channel original movie, Jump In. Great movie. So first up, we have something that kind of carried over from July. I did a shoot for a company called Link and made a launch video for their product that showed at a conference and that they shared organically and on their website. They then came back around and asked for some ad cuts. They wanted a 30-second ad cut in a 9:16 and a 16:9 aspect ratio that they could show on like Facebook ads, YouTube ads, all that good stuff. So that was super easy. I talked with the client and we basically took the launch cut it down a little bit, made it a little bit more advertising, got to the punchline, I guess, a little bit quicker. The client was great to work with for the second time around, and I was excited to get to do a 16:9 version. Let's move on to the next one because it's big and we might need a minute to talk about it. So similar to July with the Link project, there was one big project in August that I had, and then a few other things kind of sprinkled around it. And this month's big project was for Milos hamburgers. So this is a quick service restaurant based here in Birmingham. I've been doing work with them for a few years. I started doing some social projects with them like 3 or 4 years ago, and they've been a recurring client. Every time I've worked with them has been a great time, and they've honestly given me opportunities, I guess, to step up and rise above where I currently am. It's really nice to have a client that trusts me and believes in me and keeps coming back. Maybe I'm doing something right. But for this project, my point of contact hit me up and they needed a couple of spots for their new product, the loaded fries. Similar to the Link video, this timeline was relatively short. We met on July 21st and they needed the final product by September 4th. And 6 weeks is a pretty decent amount of time, but to put together a whole crew, a whole project, finish fleshing out storyboards and shot lists, shooting it, editing it, coloring it, 6 weeks is maybe not that much time. So the very first thing I did was hire my producer, Madison. She's always my go-to producer. And then we worked out the rest of the budget and hired out the rest of the crew. The crew on this one was dope as per usual. So it was me as director, DP, and kind of co-producer, Madison as my producer and first AD. Then we had the boys from Alagripco, Seth and Thomas, Show as my first AC. We had Kinsley as set deck and art department, a fantastic food stylist, Lauren Wood, and her assist, Aline. Also, Jacob was there taking behind the scenes photos. And of course, we had the client. Along with getting the crew figured out, we had to rent a studio and get camera gear rented. So we rented a studio called Studio 104. Shout out to Max and Steven over there at Studio 104. They run a production company out of that studio called 11 Productions, who just makes some of my favorite stuff that comes out of Birmingham. I'll show some on the screen. And they also allowed us to rent their red Raptor. So we use Studio 104 because they have an in-house kind of kitchen set. The only problem we ran into was it looked a little bit too much like a home kitchen, but Kinsley came through with some stainless steel sticky paper. Basically, she covered a lot of things in the kitchen with this stainless steel paper and made it look more industrial. We also had 2 stainless steel kind of tables to help get us there as well. The only big letdown from the day was I did end up cutting one shot. It was a top-down rig. I was gonna have French fries kind of falling past the frame of the camera and shoot it at 300 or 400 frames per second to match up with this shot, which is the same thing but from a front angle. But due to time constraints, I decided to cut it. To be quite honest, I was expecting to be able to find a similar shot or a shot to fill that gap from ArtGrid. And there are a ton of incredible French fry shots on ArtGrid, but there were none that worked for me with crinkle cut fries. All in all, we figured it out in the edit. And speaking of the edit, let's move on to post-production. Similar to the link video, I did all of the editing and the coloring and a little bit of sound design as well, which brings us to another thing I want to do differently moving forward. A lot of us came up in this one-person band, do everything, shoot everything, edit everything, it's all yours. But one thing that I'm finding is that I don't want to edit client projects. It's just not really what I enjoy. I'd much rather be putting my time and my effort towards directing and DPing and writing and let someone who is better and passionate about editing do the editing. I still love doing the color, so when I do have opportunities to do color on commercial projects, I take them. But I think moving forward, the editing is gonna be passed off. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Specializing is great, and again, it allows me to really work on what I wanna be great at. So the next job I did was for my friend Kinsley. She was handling the photo and video branding of a new cycling and fitness studio that's coming to Birmingham. And then my homie Jannard got brought on to do video, and he brought me on to be his first AC. I love working with Kinsley and Jannard. I worked with them at an agency for a few years, and Jannard has really been a key mentor for me over the past few years. So getting to shoot with them, one, they're both incredible at what they do, so I know it's gonna look awesome. It's also just a good time. There was a moment where we were shooting on the DZO 90mm macro at like f2.1, and that pushed my focus pulling skills, I'm not gonna lie. But G knew what he wanted, he directed me through it, and we made a pretty dope video. Speaking of Jannard, he was also my director on the next project we're gonna talk about, which was a full color project. So this is a docu-style piece that they shot, and it's really good. If it's up, I'll link it. So I met with Jannard, we had a little discovery meeting, talked about everything that he was needing from me as a colorist. And then I sent 3 kind of different look options, and I let him and his team pick the overall look that we wanted to go for the project. Overall, very thankful Jannard trusts me to color this. It was a great time. We did a sit-in color grade at one point just to kind of wrap everything up. It was really fun. I really do enjoy coloring. The next project I did was for a company called Armosa. They're a production company based in Florence, Alabama. It was a great experience. It was the first time I had worked with anyone on that crew, and they were all incredible. We were shooting essentially at warehouses that fulfill orders for big brands and just kind of showing how that process goes. But overall, I was acting as a camera operator. There was another DP there, Mateo, who since then I've became real friends with, which is super fun. A guy named Lucas who does G&E work here in Birmingham and up in Florence. And then my guy Jackson, who was the director of the project. This took place the entire last week of August, and there was a lot of driving involved. So on Monday, Mateo and I drove up from Birmingham to Florence, hopped in the grip van and drove to Memphis, which was I think another 2 or 3 hours. Stayed in Memphis that night, shot all day Tuesday, drove from Memphis to Dallas all day on Wednesday, shot all day Thursday, and then on Friday we drove from Dallas back to Florence, got in my car, back to Birmingham, 10 p.m., came home, took a shower, probably played some FIFA and then went to sleep. But overall, it was a great shoot. Getting to be a camera operator and not quite be in charge of everything, but still problem solve, look for great shots, follow the shot list, but also be creative. It was a great time. So roughly throughout the month before tax, I brought in $9,250 from all these projects combined. In the concept of the Milos project, that's only considering my fees for editing, coloring, DPing, and producing. That doesn't take into account the entire budget of the project that I brought into the company and then paid other people. So I'm just talking about what I personally brought home. And yeah, that is an incredible month for me. My monthly goal that I set when I first started doing freelance is that I wanted to bring in at least $4,500 a month after tax, because that equated to what I was making at my salary job, a little bit more actually, and this does that. Also, when I hold back for tax, I hold back 30%. The IRS doesn't always take all of that, but I like to have it in a separate account anyway. So if we take 30% of 9,250, I'd be left with $6,475 in profit. Pretty good. But y'all, that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, if it was valuable in any way, I'm glad. If you want to, like the video. If you're not subscribed, please hit subscribe. Also, when I hit 5,000 subs, I'm doing a DaVinci Resolve license giveaway, so be ready for that. But y'all, seriously, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.